And our top focus tonight is our justice system and its language gender sensitive enough? The Supreme Court today took suo motu cognizance of a Calcutta High Court ruling that called for adolescent girls to control their sexual urges instead of giving in to 2 minutes of pleasure. And I'm quoting these words. Else, she will be seen as a loser in the eyes of the society. And that it was the duty of every female to protect her dignity. Hard to believe that this came from a court. The Supreme Court thankfully did not mince its words. Sending out a strong message, it said the Calcutta High Court order sent out the wrong signals. It also questioned which principles were being applied by judges under the Section 482, and that writing such judgments was absolutely wrong, unwarranted, and irrelevant. But is this a one-off case? Unfortunately, no. As my team and I researched, we found several remarks that seemed absolutely unwarranted and sanctimonious. Let's bring some of them before you. But before we do this, important to also mention, courts have time and again stood to honor, uphold the dignity and rights of citizens. But what needs to change needs to. Let's look at some excerpts of judgments and the wordings that should never have been made in the first place. Just recently, Nagpur bench on January 2nd said, following, abusing, pushing a woman might be annoying acts, but did not constitute outraging the modesty of a woman. I understand there was a section's legality being deliberated, but to reduce the aggression or the alleged act as just annoying is not acceptable, to say the least. In 2021, Bombay High Court said, well, let's just look at, in 2021, Madhya Pradesh High Court asked a sexual assault accused to get a rakhi tied by the victim as a condition of bail. Karnataka High Court in 2020 said that it was unbecoming of an Indian woman to go to sleep after she was ravished. And let me remind our viewers, last year in August, the Supreme Court came out with a handbook on gender stereotypes, how to avoid these gender stereotypes. But what appears as gender insensitivity really is beyond just stereotypes. I'm reminded of what CJI Chandrachud last year had said. When you judge others, you should not be judgmental. And as we dive deep into what really must change in the justice system, we are focusing on the justice that is being delivered, the language that is being used. I'm being joined right now by Amrita Nair, who's an advocate with Bombay High Court, Khushbu Jain, who's a lawyer with the Supreme Court, Rekha Agrawal, who's an advocate with the Supreme Court, and Zakiullah Khan, the former justice. Thank you very much, all four of you, for joining us. Really appreciate the time that you have taken. Well, first to you, Amrita Nair, you have even documented some of these judgments and have outrightly called them as misogynist. What are we really looking at? You perhaps would be the best to explain to us. We may just be able to look at the words and the judgments that have come out. But as an advocate yourself, can you explain to us, what are we looking at? How deep really is this rot?
Well, Sneha, thank you so much for that question. It's actually something that we all need to think about. The judiciary is not merely, at the end of the day, for dispensing justice. It also needs to cater for the needs of any future complainants that might come forward. So we need to keep in mind, especially in a system like India, where we have precedents which are binding on lower courts, high courts coming out with such misogynist, sexist remarks in their order becomes very problematic for anybody who wants to approach the judicial system at first. Now, when I was researching for an article that I wrote maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I was quite astonished. And what you rightly pointed out in the introduction, that this is, some may see it as an aberration, But that's not so. It has been a norm, in fact, in our country to sort of allow your personal biases and prejudices to creep in while dispensing justice or in the name of justice when you're writing words. And I think the best way to put it is how one Miss Finley had written that words matter and you need to be very careful with legal language because it has implications. So, just like you pointed out, there were so many stereotypes which were reinforced and confirmed by the courts themselves. And the only way to tackle these issues, to be very honest, is to talk about these, make people undergo sensitization programs, not just in schools or colleges, but also at the judicial academies, because one of the major
Right.
ethics that a judge must ensure is that of judicial integrity and also at the same time not judging. And that's where I feel like the judicial academies play a very important role in sensitizing the judges that while you're judging another person,
Amrita,
yes,
very, very important points, and possibly also because how you wrote and
yes,
compiled all those judgments together is also very important. But let me also get introductory remarks from others in the panel. Khushbu Jain, as somebody who is practicing in Supreme Court, how do you look at this issue? Is this an issue at all? Do judges, do advocates, do they talk about this? Is this a point of concern at all in between the walls of the judiciary?
Yeah, absolutely. When you talk about judiciary, one thing that we always talk about is that there is an aspect of neutralness and impartiality in decisions, regardless of what your personal views are. Because the moment you bring in your personal view, that's where your opinion and your biasness comes in place, and that is detrimental to the entire aspect of independence of judiciary. Now, that one point is impartiality. The second point that comes in place is the aspect of maintaining judicial independence. Now, all of us have been talking about that, judiciary has been independent. One of the integral part of judges is the independence of judiciary, and we have to keep judiciary as a separate pillar altogether, and it has to be independent so that it can be sacrosanct and it can be the guardian of the constitution. But the moment somebody starts expressing personal views or preaching, that might lead to a public perception, biasness, partiality that can practically threaten the credibility of the judiciary. And in order to uphold the integrity of the judiciary, I mean, it's the foremost thing that that one doesn't get into personal opinions. The other aspect that also comes is the rule of law, because these are practically judicial decisions should be based on established legal principles, statutes, and also precedents. And when you're not on these, then is the point where you bring in precedents in place, because you will be the one who will be setting the precedent. As my earlier colleague was talking about, that's a very valid point, because if a higher judiciary makes some kind of comments, that's been looked upon by all other lower courts, and that's been taken up. Whether you're expressing your personal views or adding those things, that adds to the kind of perceptions judges have, and then lower judiciary, it percolates there, and that's where the society is being impacted. So I think it's high time one has to understand, or judges have to understand, that they need to respect both the parties which are involved, and they need to be impartial, and they cannot have biasness in place, and they need to infringe upon, they need to refrain from infringing upon dignity and autonomy of the parties which are involved in the case, so that that sacrosanct or that dignity of the judiciary is maintained.
Right. Let me just bring in former Justice Zakiullah Khan. Sir, now time and again, courts have also stepped in. For example, when the Bombay, and I have this instance with me, Bombay High Court had said in 2021, groping a minor's breast without skin-to-skin contact cannot be termed as sexual assault. Now, the Supreme Court did come in, and Supreme Court did stay this order. So there have been time and again when there have been efforts to correct what needs to be corrected. But I wanted to ask you a question, in organizations, when you see something is wrong, a junior can go up to a senior and talk and say, hey, this was not right. This should have been worded differently. Does this kind of conversation happen after after a verdict is given between, say, an advocate or judges, or even between judges? Do such conversations happen?
Yes, yes. This type of conversation often happens because as far as this part is concerned, what you are discussing here, one thing I must say that we are dealing with that case that is very sensitive, and that the matter is pending before the Honorable Apex Court. Since the matter is pending Apex Court, we can't predict anything which can be any affect the proceedings of the case. Therefore, on the merit side, on the academic side only,
Certainly.
I'll discuss so many things. Say, there are Judicial Protection Act. That is the presiding officer. Presiding officer, that is the judge, is protected by so many things, and therefore the judge, if he has given a wrong decision, wrong decision is always set aside by the higher court or the appellate court, something like that. But if he is given a wrong verdict, that is wrong application of mind, or wrongly worded his judgment, he passed a judgment which is wrongly worded, and it reflects a other opinion which ought not to have given. I remember that 30 or 32 years back, it was a case of Mathura case, very famous case. That is the Sant Tukaram versus State of Maharashtra. It was the case when the Supreme Court apex judge has given a ruling in which certain remarks were passed against the victim, and they said that the orders were passed favoring certain accused. Therefore, the entire thing went up in mash, and everybody said that it should not have been. The honorable judge should have taken that, and there was a strike and everything. All the legal fraternity come up together and raise their slogans, and the result was that this judge himself recalled it, and for a review that it was taken back, and the wordings were struck off. Therefore, this type of wording, the magistrate or the judge or the High Court judge has no right to say anything about which is immoral, which is against the prestige and honor of any person. Here, the present days, the women live, that is very famous, and the women's empowerment is going on, and this is true. And the women should be given due position, and women should be given proper respect. And if anything, any awkward disposition of the presiding officer hurts any person, that is bad in law. But I'm saying that on academic point, that is bad in law, and the matter is pending before Supreme Court. Supreme Court may or may not rectify the judgment or may other thing, because we don't know what was the intention, what was the other thing, because there are so many things. When you write a judgment, see, I've been a judge for 38 years, and I wrote number of judgments as a session judge, as a High Court judge, and something. And up to last moment, we are not sure that what to do. And at the moment, after considering so many facts and figures, then we reach to conclusion. And that conclusion may be of some time of the eagerness, or some time of the you can't control your emotions or something, and by that time, by mistake, something you have done. But that should not have been, because the judge is supposed to be sane, and judge is supposed to be wise, and he has got wisdom, and therefore he should act in accordance with the law and rule of law. And rule of law says that even if there are no spoken laws, there are no statute, even then he should have taken care of the rule of law. That is, it should be inside the periphery of the natural law. Though natural law is nothing, and natural law, act in disregard of the natural law is not permissible. But the natural law is the thing which must
Justice
be
Khan,
taken
thank
care
you
of.
for sharing such important insights. And thank you for joining us on this show. It really means a lot that you have joined us on this show, and you're talking about something that is so crucial and sensitive. But also to reiterate, at no point are we questioning an order or the sections under which it was brought in, what we are really trying to focus here, and there's no doubt about this, is the kind of language that in some cases has been used, and about how, as an individual, as a citizen, when we are going to the courts for justice, irrespective of whether justice has been met or not, I'm not getting into that perception. What I'm getting into is the language that has been used to deliver the justice.
I could not explain.
That really is our focus. No, you have made very important points, Justice Khan. We have no doubts about it. You have made very important points about it. But let me also get in Advocate Rekha at this point. Advocate Rekha, to what Justice was talking, and that is about, if there is a wrong judgment, there are people who would reach out to the judges, who would speak to the judges. There would be protests that would come in. But how many such cases do you really come in? And we're talking about a vast section of courts, starting right from the lowest court till the highest court. So the sensitivities may not be the same, though they need to be, because all are educated and aware. However, ma'am, my question again to you is it normal to differentiate between an awfully worded judgment, which may be seen as very gender insensitive, particularly to somebody who is coming to the court to get some kind of a reprieve or justice, when you compare it to what is perhaps perceived as a wrong judgment? Is a wrongly worded judgment seen as a wrong judgment in the legal parlance? I'm trying to understand this.
Yes, in the judiciary, having practiced for about 36, 37 years now, and in the humble experience that I have gained, there are certain things which are what are called right judgments and what are wrong judgments. And there are certain judgments which may be right or wrong, which may not be very happily worded. So I think that what we are discussing now in this your show is that when the judges, and judges are ultimately human, let us not forget the fact that judges, though they have a very sacrosanct and a very, very big responsibility on their shoulders, but they have to stick to the rule of law. They have to decide and pass the judgment within the parameters of law. At the same time, there is what is called a moral and social responsibility also. And whatever judgment that is passed by a judge sets, especially the higher courts, whether the High Court and the Supreme Court, it sets a precedent for the lower courts. And the judges, as I said, since they are human beings at the end of the day, they often, the kind of background that they're coming from, the educational background, it is not just an LLB degree or an LLM or a master's degree or a doctorate that a particular judge may be having behind his back, before he joins the judicial system. But a lot of factors come into play while the judges are dictating the judgment. This is what my personal opinion is. And sometimes some of the judgments get wrongly worded because of the baggage that a particular judge may be having behind his back.
Allow me one sentence to what you're saying, ma'am. To becoming a judge, you have humongous amount of experience. You're not just suddenly becoming a judge. You have humongous amount of experience with humongous amount of exposure to various sections of cases. So you may not come from that background, but how is it excused that one can't grow with times? For the lack of a better word.
It is not excusable. It is not excusable. It cannot be pardoned. But the point I was trying to make over here, Sneha, is that despite the fact that judges do have a responsibility upon their shoulders, and it is not as if they deliberately pass a judgment which is not happily worded. A judgment may be right or wrong, that can be challenged in the higher court. A lower court judgment can be challenged in the High Court to Supreme Court. In the Supreme Court, there can be a review petition as well as a curative petition. So it is nothing that, as I said, that no one is above law. And the beauty of our legal system is, the constitutional mandate is that you are not presumed to be guilty, until you've been given the natural justice and you've been able to say whatever your point of innocence is in the court. What the point I'm trying to make over here is that I do not think that the judges deliberately make points which are actually extremely insensitive, and some of the judgments which I read about in Amrita's article, which we're discussing about, and she's really beautifully worded it when she's compiled all the judgments. And very recently, even I think the Calcutta High Court has passed very insensitive words by saying that girls should control their sexual urges, and they should keep them in check. So such kind of words which are often voiced by the judges, they set a very, very wrong example in society, because you are kind of giving a signal, or rather a green signal to the wrongdoers to perceive women in a particular manner. And sometimes I think that these views which are expressed by the judges are often marred or tarnished by their own educational background, by their own, whether they're coming from the rural sector or from the urban sector, or by your own family background, whether you had a more liberal upbringing, or whether you had a very closed kind of upbringing. So these kind of personal experiences of the judges, which should not come in the way, they often are reflected in the judgments. Like one of the judges I was reading in Amrita's article said, one of the judges has said that a woman should be like Sita, a woman. So that means the ideal stereotype that we are still carrying.
That was in 2012. We just left it back because it was so. It was so many decades. It was almost a decade apart.
And at the same time, the judge ends by saying that she should be a prostitute in bed. So if that is the kind of mindset that a male judge, particularly a male judge, is carrying, in his head when he's passing a judgment. So I'm sorry to say that such kind of things set a wrong precedent. And often, there's a big hue and cry, by the bar, by the lawyers who kind of take, many organizations also take an affront to it. And ultimately, these judgments are set aside.
Right. Let me just get in Amrita Nair at this point. Amrita, so, there was this entire handbook against stereotypes that was issued by the Supreme Court recently, by the CJI himself. Have things changed?
Honestly, Sneha, not so much, because...
just to add to that, stereotypes is such a, with what we are discussing right now, stereotypes is not even that deep word that can explain what we are trying to discuss here. It's just, at that time when I got to know that CJI had put out a handbook of stereotypes, against stereotypes, it sounded so huge, and it is. It is commendable that a handbook like this has come out. But the wordings are so beyond that.
Yes. So if you actually look at the handbook, which talks about these stereotypical words that are generally used within the courtrooms, they do address a few of them, but it goes beyond that. What we are also looking at is how patriarchy and misogyny is perpetuated through conducts which are also within the four walls of the court. It's not just the words. So when you're looking at,
and not necessarily only men or male judges. I think that's also important to point out.
No. So that is where it gets interesting. A lot of people, when you talk about, how we need to remedy this issue, come up with a solution saying that we need more female justices. But that's not the answer. The answer lies in having more feminist judges. Now, what do I mean when I say feminist judges? Is that people who are willing to unlearn years and years of conditioning that they have been subjected to, and willing to learn the norms which are appropriate in such a sensitive era that we live in. An example of that would be a Madras High Court judge who recently, I think it was 2 years ago, he said that I would not deliver a judgment until and unless I equip myself with all the knowledge and information that I require to adjudicate this
Absolutely.
matter. And that's the kind of judges we look forward to. So it doesn't matter whether you're a woman or a man, because if you look at it, the Bombay High Court judgment that you just pointed out was passed by a female justice. The one where you said that over-the-top touching would not constitute a crime under POCSO. So it's not about gender. It's more about who are willing to unlearn and learn and be in touch with the kind of times we are living in.
Justice Khan, right. Justice Khan, from your times till today, have you seen the wordings of judgments see a sea change for the better, for being more gender sensitive? Have you seen this, or do you still say aberrations go on?
No. We are most of the judges do follow the procedure, and they take care of the thing that they should not be it should not go. It should not hurt the feeling of any lady or any of the persons of the society who are for favoring ladies and for the victims. I tell you, probably you don't know, in fact, and the other debate persons who you joined here are a Supreme Court lawyer and High Court lawyer. I have been also a session judge, And while acting as session judge in 90s, when I was promoted just as session judge, I have gone through these type of cases. When the sexual assault is there, then it's very difficult for judge to adjudicate the parties, and where the liars were adamant that, sir, Your Honor, must write it like this, so the act of the sexual act is to be taken for granted, and we used to minimize the things so as to fulfill the legal terminology, and they used to expand it so that they may benefit it. And therefore, it was one of the most horrifying experience I had when I have snubbed many of the liars. Say, be use guarded language. This is not the place. And while cross-examining the lady doctor,
wonderful.
And when she has examined, then only we had to pass a very difficult time. And the defense lawyer used to cross-examine and ask any worthy and any question which is against the integrity and which is against the honor of the lady. But we have to check it, and we used to direct them, and we used to sometimes take a quarrel type of issue, but we used to solve it, and we try to solve it in a manner that it should not go outside, and it should not create any misgivings, or it should not create any atmosphere as a misogynist or something like that we are not in favor of the ladies, and we care for the ladies. We care for the victim. Whenever the lady is victim, we have got automatic sympathy.
I'm not saying everybody is like that, and that is definitely not the peg of our discussion. Justice Khan, sorry to interject, but I just have to ask you one more thing, because we're also short on time.
Just a minute. One minute only. As a High Court judge, there are the division benches and the full bench, and we used to discuss so many things. Sometimes a single judge may or may not, what you call that, misunderstanding or something can't express himself. Therefore, he uses the words, and that sometimes affect the persons and other persons, and therefore it is bad in law. But it happens very rarely. 90%, 99% cases in the
Justice
judges
Khan,
do care
Justice
of that
Khan,
and do take
Justice
care
Khan,
of that. And
Justice Khan, for things to change, and you may be the best person, I have to get everyone on this. I've not been able to go back to Rekha, but before I move on to Advocate Rekha, I have to ask you this, Justice Khan. You know, we often say we have to sensitize the generations, but I'm not talking about that long-drawn plan. If things need to change, and if the language needs to change, even in the few cases that are emerging, if things need to clear up for the better, what are the immediate steps that must be taken? As a judge, I'm sure you must have thought about this many times. What are the practical 3 things, if you have to say today in the show? What can be done?
We have taken a number of the courses in the Judicial Academy also, and for that they used to guide us as to how to understand the thing and how to use the languages against that. It should not be against any other person, because the morality is one of the principles. Although morality and law is a different thing, but law should not be taken for granted unless morality is there. Morality and law go together, and therefore if a judge is moral and if he keeps the moral things, then only he can understand the thing, and he should take care of that. By his action, nobody should be hurt, and this is the main criteria. Most of the judges do follow this thing, but sometimes because of some other I don't know, because the man is a different man is a person who can go anywhere, any type of he can walk in any direction. Therefore, but most of the things, what was the judicial precedents and judicial principles say, that the try to walk inside is a straight way, and that is we should not go taking around, but we used to take a straight way, and we used to abide by the decisions. We used to abide by the law of the precedent is already there, and we used to take care of the law of precedent, and we used to act law of precedent whenever
right.
there is necessary.
Okay.
I just told you that Mathura case, you can
Right.
you can say that Mathura case was there. Mathura case,
Absolutely,
you just study
Justice
it,
Khan.
and that case that has been what's been taken back by the
Thank you, Justice Khan. Advocate Rekha, if I can just come to you, what
My
would
pleasure.
you suggest as a practicing
Yes.
advocate in the Supreme Court? What would you suggest? What would you recommend?
I think as the other panelists said, and as Amrita said right in the beginning, I think that in the Judicial Academy, the judges need to undergo courses regarding sensitization. Gender sensitization should begin not at the end, but I think at the beginning of your careers, you know. And as I said, right, real education begins at home. So, it's all right, you know, when they become judges at the, at the high point of their careers. But I wish that education, real education should begin in the schools and in the homes, so that by the time the judges become judges, you know, they are able to, they are more sensitive and they respect women, and they differentiate between what is morality and legality.
Okay.
So something which may be immoral may not be
Advocate
illegal,
Khushbu,
and vice versa.
let me just
So
go over
I
to
think that,
Advocate Khushbu. We are just running short
yes.
of time. Advocate Khushbu, Justice Khan was talking about morality. How would you perceive this?
No, I have a different view. I would say that there has to be a fairness and impartiality when you talk about judiciary, or when you talk about functional judiciary. And when I talk about fair and impartiality, you can have morality also in place. But the whole aspect of judiciary and the judges is, to go with the rule of law. And when I talk about rule of law, you have to stick to that. You cannot have your personal morality for you would be very different, and morality for me would be very different. It's a subjective thing. So if we continue with the morality,
And that's
you're
the
bringing
reason
in
why I've asked you
again.
this question also. How do you, is there a different meaning of morality when you talk in legal parlance? Because I've heard so many people talk about morality. I mean, is there a different meaning? I'm just trying to understand as a layperson.
Absolutely. So you cannot talk about morality here, because morality is a subjective thing. It's different for you. It's different for me. It's different for, somebody else. It's different for judges. And we cannot have judges bring in morality over there. Yes, we have to see that how world is changing, and
But they do
precedents
study
come in place.
morality as an issue. Is that what Justice Khan was saying? Justice Khan, you study morality as a subject. Is that what you were trying to tell us? For judges, is that how they are sensitized also as part of their courses?
I think, I suppose.
Just trying to understand.
I say morality is not that, Madam was saying that rightly, that the rule of law is more important, and morality is a part of that. Whenever you are a judge, that means you are much above than the ordinary person, much above. You are sitting 6 feet high, and therefore you must act, your action should be like that. You should combine morality and rule of law in such a manner so that it may not affect the other person's right, affect the other person's, and he should think that he is in the garb of a god. Yes, exactly. The position of judge is much more superior than what we think. And therefore, we are not expecting anything that a judge should do all these things.
I cannot thank each of you enough to take your time out and to be part of this discussion. Each of you have brought in some very important perspectives. Thank you very much. I just hope that this would be perhaps one effort to draw the attention to something that so crucially needs to change in a system that we so totally depend upon for justice. Thank you very much for being part of this program and for watching this.